Hello everybody, good morning or good afternoon or good evening depending on where you are in the world, and it's time. Let's all get together. Get your drink, coffee, tea, cola, whatever you like. Here we go, 3, 2, 1. That gets us going. So, a really exciting day. Alex Thomson keeps his lead but has now hit the doldrums, and most of the boats today will be getting into the doldrums. So we're going to talk about what they are and what the challenge is that the skippers are facing. And right after the doldrums, the skippers are going to have to make a very important choice, much like they had to do when they encountered Theta. There are a few roads, let's say, that lead down to victory with Cape of Good Hope, which is kind of the major landmark that they're going to have to pass next, which is far away, all the way down in Africa, and really their entry port into the Southern Ocean. But between here and there are some very interesting weather obstacles to overcome. So we're going to talk a little bit about those, and by popular request from all you guys, I'm going to talk a little bit about autopilots today, because of course we're talking a lot about the racers racing their boats, but actually for the most part it's the autopilots doing that. And I think I have some interesting stuff about autopilots to share with you, to give you guys a bit more insight in how those actually work, what they can do, what they cannot do. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So before I continue, I have to give a little shout out to let me check here, to Rory and Jake, because apparently they went sailing with their bathtub a few days ago while they were watching the show. They forgot to put the tap off, and they had a bit of a water disaster in the house. So warning everybody else who's watching, make sure your oven is off, taps are locked down when you're sitting down nice with your drinks to watch the show. So okay, having said that, hope that everything is safe over there, and now let's get started with the analysis. So here we can see that Alex is still very much in the lead, but as far as boat speed goes, gone down from around 20 knots to about 10 knots, so average still 17, but he's really getting into the zone with some less wind now. You can also see that when we take a look at the same situation here in my predict wind app. So you can see the rest of the field here in the top, and you can see that they're really entering this kind of doldrum zone. And for the rest of the fleet, we see that they right now still having great wind, so most of them really blasting downwards. But they're probably going to catch up to Alex a little bit as he enters the doldrums and slows down. On the other hand, that's also not that bad, because he will slow down and he will slowly go in, and much of the fleet will probably kind of come together a little bit, but he also will be the first out to really have good speed again probably. And so actually, even though the distance may seem shorter, that doesn't necessarily mean that his lead isn't actually still expanding, or maybe that he's losing a lot of ground. It's just hard to see in the doldrums, because it's like everything comes together, but then once the wind starts again at the other side of the doldrums, things tend to also expand again. So it'll be interesting to see how that will go. As for the rest, we see that hot on the heels, linked out. Yes, we can, with Jean Le Cam still in third place. Really impressive. I've been keeping a look at his boat speed, and his averages are so high. He must be really pushing everything he's got out of the boat. Same for Apivia, still going quite a bit faster on average than Jean Le Cam, but unlike LinkedIn, haven't been able to catch up yet. And behind there we see a nice little other foiler fleet with PRB, Bureau Valet 2 and Initiatives Cur. And we have here also, I think, the Sea Explorer, right? Let's see, where do we have it? Is it in here? I thought I had... Yeah, and we have a Sea Explorer from Boris Herman right behind there. It's funny to see that we have a lot of Boris Herman fans here also on the channel. I noticed that a lot of people liked my comment also to get in touch there, so really cool. Let's watch a little clip from Boris, because his channel is also really nice actually.
See my shadow? As you can see, don't need to explain much. Sunset, cockpit is a mess as usual. That's my job now, to clean up. And just got back to the bigger jib, to the jib top. Jib top and staysail. J3 as a staysail. Okay, I'm super sweaty and naked, so I don't show myself, but I leave that to your fantasy.
So Boris in 7th place, really nice. And then we have Initiative Skur right now still in 9th, so holding on to her position, and much more further down in the back we see that actually Medallia, that we're also keeping an eye on, still in 21st place, and you know, basically side to side with One Planet, One Ocean, Dida Costa, because they have very similar boats, so they're really racing it out together and kind of, you know, having a little bit of a team battle there, so really cool to see. And you know, currently One Planet is a little bit ahead of her, but you know, we'll see what happens. I think she already tagged. She tagged first, so you know, we'll see how that develops. And so what's going to happen in the next few days? Now, as you can see behind me, I loaded the Predict Wind app to be able to put some various courses based on the current wind predictions in, and we'll switch to that view now actually. And so the thing that's going to happen now, the big choice that's coming, as I mentioned, is going to happen pretty fast actually. So we see the Doldrums here right in front of Hugo Boss right there. But as we zoom out, the kind of conundrum that all of the sailors are about to face will become more and more apparent as I zoom out. Because as you can see, we have several options for the route, but at this particular point in the race, they are really very, very far apart. They are literally the size of countries apart. And as we zoom out more, you will start to see why that is. So this is me zooming out completely. Well, let's zoom in a little bit more. But as I take the bottom end of these courses, you can see that they move through this always very tricky and very complex St. Helena system down there. And that basically there are 4 wildly different routes through this system. So there's an option to go far more west, which you see, you know, described in this kind of black line. We have 3 options that are more or less taking us through the middle, and the straight road here, which is not really a real option, but it's just, you know, for measure on top. And so at this time, the prediction is that a route more to the center will be faster, but to be clear, this is a path that is going to take them at least another more or less a week to cross. So you know, this is not something that will make a difference right now, but as you can see, these paths are very far apart. So once Alex makes a choice for a certain route, he will kind of really have to commit to that, and of course go with the weather as it develops. So this is based on a 6, 7, 8 day weather prediction, and from all our experience in the race so far, we know that, you know, 7, 8 day predictions are really not worth much right now. So, you know, 2, 3 days ahead is really the best we can do. But having said that, it's still a choice. And part of that is just a gamble. You have to get a little bit lucky with this. But there's also this other really cool psychological aspect, and that is that Alex, being firmly in the lead at this moment, if he, you know, let's assume that he makes it through the Doldrums still in the lead, then somewhere by tomorrow afternoon or so, he's going to really have to consider his course, which means, am I going to start leaning more west, or am I going to go more or less straight to the middle? We can see, if we look at the map here already, this kind of split. So we have the red and the green option kind of taking a similar path, while the blue is a little bit more to the east. Well, you know, Alex is of course working with pretty much the same info that I have here. So they're going to have to consider these options. But here's the interesting thing. Once Alex commits to one of these routes, it's very much the question what the other boats behind him, namely LinkedIn, PRB, etc., Apivia, are going to do. Why? Because, well, in sailing, if you're going to get lucky, you prefer to get lucky alone. But if you're going to get unlucky, it's better to get unlucky together, right? And so what I mean by that is that if some of the guys behind Alex choose to take another route, so to take another gamble, let's say, and say, well, Alex is going one path. If I go the same path as Alex, the chance that they'll catch up with them may be small, right? Because if he gets lucky, they will get more or less the same or similar circumstances. They're not that far apart. So it will be kind of a head-to-head race, right? But if they take another weather option, if they take another routing option, then they might get lucky and Alex might get unlucky, right? So if the paths, and these three paths of blue, red and green, are not so far apart from their prediction as far as when they will arrive around the Cape, so all three right now seem very close to each other as far as speed. And so the gamble that everybody behind Alex, or at least closely behind Alex, is going to have to make is say, am I gonna go the same route? Meaning, if Alex gets unlucky, they will get unlucky. But if Alex gets lucky, they will get lucky also. And they'll more or less have a good chance to stay at least close to Alex and maybe overtake him. Or do they risk it and take a different route, and then if they get lucky, they'll get lucky alone, but if they get unlucky, then they will also get unlucky alone. And at that point, they will kind of maybe, lose the fleet or risk the chance of running into, some kind of circumstances, maybe doldrums or whatever, where it's basically just them, or whoever else takes kind of the similar path as them, setting up this real chance for luck, let's say, also to play a bigger factor. And so that's what I'm going to be really looking for in the next few days, is to kind of see which path they're taking, and if some of the boats that are more close to Alex will make the choice to take the similar path, and kind of see what happens there, and try to just overtake him in the same weather, but basically saying, I'll take the same weather that Alex is getting and I'll take my chances there. Or will they say, well, I'm going to throw the dice, I'm going to take a different weather pattern that's definitely going to be different from Alex, and I'm going to take the gamble and see what's going to happen there. So that will be something to look out for in the next 48 hours or so. We'll probably see some divergence within the fleet if that is going to happen, and so it will be interesting to see how that leads out. And so if we actually run the animation, which is kind of a cool feature also, you can see that as the boat, so this is 4 times Alex but on a different course, makes it through the doldrums, which should be around midday tomorrow. Should be by the end of the system. And then you can see right away that the speed of the different routes is quite different. But as the weather develops itself, you can also see that, right now it might look like that western route seems a lot faster, and so now we're already pretty much a week ahead. So I'm going to stop it there, because anything above that is just wild speculation at best. But just to give you an idea of what you're likely going to see over the next few days. So that's my analysis for today, basically, as far as the weather goes. And now, since you really liked the tech discussion yesterday about the sails, I thought it might be nice to talk a little bit about autopilots today. So what is the role that autopilots are playing in this race, and kind of what are the basic components and how do they work? Well, in solo racing, the autopilot over the last 20 or 30 years, let's say, has become more and more important. There were, before the electric autopilot, there were other systems that more or less function the same way. So most sailors are familiar with the idea of a wind vane, which is basically a vane. So it's a board, something that's shaped a little bit like a flag, but it's a rigid structure, and that translates the changes in the wind into an automatic steering, you know, like to compensate for that and kind of keeps a boat on course. It's quite a difficult system to explain, so I'll do that at a separate time, but that's the mechanical autopilot, let's say. What the boats are having, you know, in the Vendee Globe is an electrical autopilot, and that basically means that we have, you know, some computer software running the courses, like actually steering the boat. And to give you an idea of how important the quality of the autopilot is, there are several boats, Initiatives Cary with Sam Davis is one of them, who have admittedly spent more money on the autopilot this race than they spent on the sails. So the entire sailing package, buying that, having that produced, cost less than what they paid for this particular autopilot and, you know, what it can do. And so why are autopilots so expensive, and what is it exactly that they're doing? Well, in the simplest form of describing it, basically what an autopilot does, or what an autopilot interface looks like, is that it's just a screen that gives you a particular compass course. So let's say I want to go, you know, 360 degrees. So I want to go, you know, on the 360th direction, let's say. Or I want to go 10 degrees or 180 or whatever it happens to be. You can just put in a course, which is, you know, one of the 360 degrees that we have on the planet. And basically your autopilot is hooked to the steering wheel, and whenever the boat deviates from the course line that you set, it will activate the steering wheel or the tiller or whatever it is on your boat. They're mostly hooked right to the well, the steering king, as it's called, so right to the rudder, but underneath, deep inside the boat, very close to where the rudder actually lives, and they then steer the boat back on the course that you know, you set. Now, with the modern autopilots that the people in the Vendee Globe are using, there are some really cool features and basically AI at work. So I actually had a long conversation with one of the few people that actually custom builds autopilots for super yachts. So he has a company, I think it's called Megatron, but correct me if I'm wrong. And it's basically one guy that is really designing these amazingly intricate systems, not for racing boats, but for super luxury yachts. So they're, you know, 20 meters, 30 meters, 40 meters, this type of yachts. And he makes really precise systems for that everybody basically loves. And he told me a lot about the math involved with this. And basically, if you imagine a boat going through the wave, so it's going up a wave, then the sail gets a bit of a kick as you get to the crest of the wave, then it dives down the wave, the speed increases as the boat is surfing down the wave, and then the sail kind of gets hidden sometimes if the wave is a bit higher, so the speed kind of decreases, then it starts climbing up a wave again, the sail maybe starts to grab air as it starts to get over the top of the waves behind it or in front of it, and then the speed increases again and it flies again over the crease of the wave, and it goes down again slowly, like speeding up, you know, surfing down but losing power in the sail. And so you can imagine that the movement of a ship through the water, if we are steering ourselves, is anything but a straight line, right? It's impossible to keep your boat especially straight, especially if you're sailing on big waves. I mean, I remember when I was sailing in Sri Lanka, for example, we had some very big rollers because it's basically the Indian Ocean. And sometimes these waves would be 6, 7, or even 8 meters high, very big, very slow rolling through. So high that sometimes if I was with multiple boats, you could see one boat basically disappear behind the wave behind you and then kind of appear again and roll over, and you would really race down these waves almost like racing down a skateboard ramp or something. That's what it feels like, but with a, you know, 10 or 15 meter boat. It's a very crazy feeling actually. But to put that into a computer that actually takes care of that is very tricky, because I remember, like, sailing up these waves, you want to sort of go up, you know, straight up to the top of the wave, kind of steer into it. And then when you go down, you want to slide down, and then you want to kind of make your bend towards the next wave, kind of slide up it, then go straight over it. So there's a real technique to surfing to sailing, in bigger waves. And that particular thing is what these modern autopilots are really great at. So they basically, most of them carry some neural networks, so they carry some artificial intelligence. And basically how artificial intelligence works is that it's not actually really intelligent, but it's able to just run lots and lots of experiments at the same time. And then as some of the experiments perform better, it starts to elaborate on those experiments. And then when, you know, a few of those elaborated experiments work a little bit better, it'll start to elaborate on those experiments. And so very much like a human baby in many ways, the network explores all these different options and eventualities and figures out certain things that are kind of the best option. And one of the things from research that's very interesting is that AIs very often come up with solutions that we humans would never really come up with. So I have a little short intermediate video here for you to kind of show you a few of those examples to kind of shock your brain and go, oh wow, that's interesting.
In the first experiment, robots were asked to walk around while minimizing the amount of foot contact with the ground. Much to the scientists' surprise, the robots answered that this can be done with 0% contact, meaning that they never ever touch the ground with the feet. The scientists wondered how that is even possible and pulled up the video of the proof. This proof showed a robot flipping over and walking using its elbows. Talk about thinking outside the box. However, in a later experiment, the gripper was crippled, making the robot unable to open its fingers. Scientists expected a pathetic video with the robot trying to push the box around and always failing to pick up the cube. Instead, they have found this. You see it right, instead of using the fingers, the robot finds the perfect angle to smash the hand against the box to force the gripper to open and pick up the box. That is some serious dedication to solving the task at hand.
So that's quite cool, huh? To have an idea of like, oh, that's the type of unexpected ideas that AIs can come up with. Now, obviously, when we're steering a sailing boat with a human on board, you know, maybe in strong storms, maybe in waves that are 10 meters high, we don't really want, you know, artificial intelligent components taking too much risks or doing too much strange things. And that's why these autopilots are so incredibly expensive, because they're not really fully running, you know, in an AI way, let's say, but they're integrating these components of, you know, people writing this code and their experiments and their experience and their own experience of many years, you know, with many of the different manufacturers that are creating autopilots that have found sort of a really good way already over many years, but then they're adding on top of that you know, really sophisticated computers being able to work on this data and to use AI basically to run through all these individual eventualities, and especially with the foiling boats that can be bouncing around quite wild in this type of wave situations when they're going, you know, 25 knots plus sometimes. In order to really stabilize that, you need just a lot of input, sometimes very small, very delicate, which is just literally beyond human capacity. And so that's why many of the sailors, you know, now they just outright admit that autopilots have become, you know, really better. They're just better at steering these boats than the sailors are themselves. That's not to say that they're better in every situation. So there are still situations when the captains on board have to, you know, take over the steering wheel in order to deal with, you know, very unexpected situations that autopilots just simply cannot train for, because, you know, there's always a black swan, as they say. So there's always an eventuality that you just didn't think of that will come up, and an autopilot may wildly interpret that the wrong way. We saw that with electric cars, with Teslas and this type of stuff, when you know, if an autopilot relies too much on the fact that there are good lines drawn on the road, for example, and some idiot decided that it would be fun to draw a line a little skewed, or you know, some people who are in charge of the maintenance of a road left an old stripe that kind of would take a car off of the road because they changed the road, and your autopilot just follows those lines, well, that would be disastrous, of course. So there's lots of these type of eventualities, which are the reason why these type of autopilots can't really rely on artificial intelligence, but they're taking all kinds of learning from that in order to improve specific parts of it. And so that's basically what they're doing. So the autopilot has the computer part, it has a compass, and the compass has also a gyroscope. And so basically what it's doing is it's kind of inside the boat. The captain sets a course, and the compass and the gyroscope are constantly feeding the computer information on the position of the boat in 3 dimensions and the position of the boat to the course. And the models in these modern super autopilots, let's call them, are, but we're talking mathematically now, building a visual representation for themselves, or they're building a representation in math of the situation that the boat is in. So the sea state and all the sort of the movement of the boat, let's say, and they're trying to find the optimal path through all of that. So they take into account wind information, they take into account the swing and the movement of the boat, they take into account the movement of the boat up and down, so going up and down in waves, the speed differences that creates, and they're melting together all of that information in order to create the optimal steering line, let's say, for the boat. By not oversteering it, because then you get a wild zigzag and you lose a lot of speed, and not keeping it too tight, because then you may get damage from different things. So it's like trying to find the best kind of loose way through the situation. And yeah, very, very impressive stuff. So hope for you people that asked about autopilots that just giving you a few insights like that. I happen to, work on and off for different companies, with my book and with the education and with the experimentation advice, let's say, that I specialize in with some AI and AR companies, because the experimentation part is very, very important in AI. And actually AI has a lot of lessons for us humans also to learn from, and to say, oh hey, if AIs do that, why aren't we actually doing that? So long story short, that's my input on autopilots today. Hope you enjoyed that, and that's my analysis for today. Really looking forward to tomorrow. I think tomorrow we'll dive into the individual options. So I'm going to do some very, very precise fine weather predictions tomorrow, looking at these different tracks, so that most of you guys also in the virtual race can see what you think and have some input from me on maybe good ideas to win some places over the next few days. So hope you enjoyed. Make sure to subscribe, hit the bell icon. If you're not a backer yet and you really enjoy the channel, please go to the website seawolvestv.com and become a backer, and help us improve the vlog. Later this week, for the backers that already did, thank you all very much, guys and girls. You're going to see some new technology and stuff up here, and I can also announce that I'm setting up some really cool partnerships in order to show you guys a lot of really cool technology, both on the actual IMACA boats, but also sailing technology in general. I have a few really cool interviews and things coming up with experts from the field that I think that all of you are really going to love. So more announcements on that later, but just wanted to tease you guys a little bit on that. So make sure to like, subscribe, go to the website, become a backer, and see you all tomorrow. Ciao.